Good morning. Thank you for tuning in and joining me for another episode of Saturday Morning Tea with Author JB. This is your girl, Author JB, and I believe today's tea is going to be good for all of our souls. But before we get into the tea, I want to take a few minutes to discuss just who I am and my ultimate goal. I am an inspirational Christian blogger, meaning I turn my blogs into weekly video shows. And my mission is to open the dialogue to conversations about how we live our everyday lives. My hope is to give each viewer food for thought to consider as we're dealing with others and while pursuing our dreams. I want us to truly live our best blessed life as whole individuals. This is an opinionated blog that comes from my point of view or my opinions based on my experiences in life, but from a Christian's point of view. However, this can apply to all of us. So there it is. I also want to take some time out to thank all of you who have sent me comments and feedback. It's very encouraging to know that you're getting something out of my gift back to the world. All I have to share is my story and what it's taken me to survive many of life's challenges. So please know that everything I share, I have been first partaker of directly or indirectly, and it all comes from my heart. So again, thank you. But today I want to speak to you about the balance between our personal weaknesses or struggles and pride. As a little girl, I would go to church with my grandmama, Mother Matthews, and I remember her using phrases like, "It's like a thorn in my flesh." You know, she would use that phrase as she described something that was bothering her or irritating her. Usually me, I was usually her thorn in her flesh. I'm just being honest. I'm sometimes a thorn in my own flesh. But as I grew older, I would use that phrase myself the same way. Then one day I decided that I wanted to find out where the phrase came from and what it really meant. So I found that the phrase origin is in the Bible, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. In this chapter, Apostle Paul was addressing the church of Corinth through a letter. There was a lot he addressed, however, in the first 10 verses, as he gave revelation about Jesus, he was talking a lot about being boastfulness and pride. Now, I won't read all of the verses, so if you want to go back and read that at your leisure, that's good. But I will read some. So the first line in verse 1, Paul says, "I must go on boasting, though there is nothing to be gained by it. I will go on to visions and revelations of the Lord." What I got from that is the Church of Corinth wanted to hear about his credentials, and he had to say all of that before he can get to his point. And when he just wanted to give them revelations, he found boastfulness unnecessary or self-elevation unnecessary because it had nothing to do with why he was addressing them. But he went on to verse 5 and 9, which I will paraphrase. He was saying to the church that he'd rather boast about Jesus. That he could boast about himself. He could throw all of his accolades around and everything, but he refrained from it because he didn't want people to put him on a pedestal. He went on to say that if he did boast about himself, he would prefer to boast about his weaknesses only. But in verse 7, he said, "So to keep me from becoming conceited, a thorn was given me in my flesh." Many have speculated about what Paul's thorn was because he wasn't frank, but what he was frank about was the fact that he had weaknesses and they kept him humble. This is all coming from the English Standard Version Bible. So I want to say this to you today. Don't despise your thorns. Our weaknesses are what keeps us humble. It keeps us human. In a world that is so impressed with money, stature, class, and titles, it can be hard to keep a level head. We've seen celebrities, men and women of faith, and some political leaders literally worshipped by others. And many of times the person themselves start out innocent, but slowly begin to fall into this trap of boastfulness and pride. I believe it's because we spend a lot of time in our lives trying to prove to others that we are good enough or worthy enough in some form or fashion. We are unknowingly put in situations where we're trying to prove ourselves to others, like proving ourselves to our supervisors, teachers, coaches, parishioners, fraternities, constituents, even Christian leaders, that we are enough. We want to be accepted and acceptable. We want to feel that we matter in a sense. We want to feel important. Many of us seek out degrees and obtain all sorts of accolades in life. We have many titles. With all of these accolades and titles, the only thing God can use to give us balance and divert us from temptation are our weaknesses. And everybody has them. Believers and non-believers. Just like Paul, we all have thorns. I'm not sure what your thorn is, but my thorn, sometimes I deal with self-doubt. Even with all my accomplishments, there are many times I don't feel good enough. I don't feel worthy enough. There are times I am overwhelmed by the fear of success. Just being honest. But I don't crawl in the bed and put the covers over my head and hide because of those periodic moments of self-doubt. I still push through them, push through my weaknesses, but those moments keep me humble. It keeps me level-headed, reminding me that I'm only human. I'm no better than or different than any other human being, and my titles and degrees mean nothing in the true realm of things. When we begin to walk in pride, it's easy to become cliquish, making others feel like outsiders, giving ourselves superior or masterful mindsets. When we find ourselves being overly admired, exalted, even idolized by others, I would suggest erring on the side of caution because there is a thin line between humility and pride and a thinner line between pride and sin. I had to take my own advice just recently. I must admit, I had a come to Jesus moment and a real man in the mirror moment. And I didn't like what I saw. I found myself craving accolades and affirmation from others, thinking I was owed it because of who I am. Mrs. Big Stuff, I was not erring on the side of caution and found myself feeling feelings of jealousy towards others and envy. Feelings that don't come natural for me because I am always happy to see others succeed. But I was feeling that way and it hurt me. I didn't know where those feelings came from, but I knew the root was pride. That is not who I want to be at all. You see, Matthew 26:41 tells us to watch as well as pray, that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but that old flesh of ours is weak. I have weaknesses, and you'll never find me pretending that I don't. I am grateful for them because they keep me humble and down to earth. They also keep me on my knees, praying to God to help me be a better version of me. Not just on the outside, but on the inside as well. I have seen some that really get upset when they're not addressed by their titles, doctor, pastor, or whoever. They are appalled. And I'm sorry to say this, but it is pretty ridiculous to me. If I earn my doctorate and someone addresses me as Jennifer, I'm okay with that because guess what? I am Jennifer. You get what I'm saying? Honestly, it makes us look needy and desperate to feel important. That in itself probably is considered a weakness. Honestly, that could be. But as your accountability partner, I want you to succeed. When we operate in pride, haughtiness, or pretentious behavior, we have placed ourselves in a box. Pride eliminates the ability to show weakness, and we all get weak and have weaknesses. This stunts our growth, the inner man growth. It makes us unrelatable. Pride and haughtiness can actually destroy our marriages, family relationships, and friendships if we're not careful. Also, the world needs what we have to give. And we need to be able to relate to them as human beings, and they need to be able to relate to us as well. As we are building our platforms, legacies, and our names, there will be those that admire us and hold us in high regard. I would caution all of us to avoid the temptation of self-exaltation, placing ourselves in realms we have no business in, like above others. It's imperative we remain humble. We can err and find ourselves exalting us while downplaying others' contributions to the world. That's not right on any level. We should display a spirit of inclusiveness. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everyone will be in our circles, but the reason they're not in our circles shouldn't be because of haughtiness. Another thing, I am not saying downplay your accomplishments because they took a lot to attain, a lot of effort and discipline. But what I am saying is don't allow your accomplishments to make you, you make them. And for those of you who receive these words from me, I encourage you to embrace your thorns. Don't despise them. I am not suggesting that you succumb to them or fall victim to them. You still push through them. What I am suggesting is that you understand that our thorns or weaknesses keeps us humble and keeps us looking to the hills for which comes our help. There is freedom in humility. When you are walking in humility, it mitigates the obligation for us to pretend that we have no issues, no struggles, no weaknesses. Wow, I know I couldn't survive in that self-induced prison. So embrace the fact that we all have issues. That fact keeps us human and it keeps us authentic. Okay? Well, I have come to the end of this episode and I hope that you can find something from it that you can apply to your own lives. Please stay safe out there, wash your hands, and stay home, please, if you can. Okay? Well, this is Author J.B. Allen signing out. And until next episode, remember to dream big because you, my dear mama,